Hello, testing. Yeah, there we go. Call to order the meeting of City Council of 16 July 2020. Suzanne, roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Carr.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem LeVar.
Here.
Councilmember Case.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Here.
Councilmember Paff.
Here.
Councilmember Zulawaga.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
If everybody could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
America, we love you.
Thank you. We've got some special things happening tonight. I'm pretty excited. We've got a celebration of a retirement of 29 years of service for police officer Glenn Jardin, and I would like the police chief to come up and start off the festivities wherever he is. There he is.
Thank you, Mayor. Where do I start with an officer who has given 29 years of full-time service to the residents of Woodland Park? I guess to put it in perspective, when he started in 1991 as a police officer, I was 16 years old.
Awesome.
Glenn has been serving our region for much longer than 29 years. I found his old Woodland Park job application for a reserve officer position dated November 16th, 1980. When he applied to be a reserve officer, he had already been a volunteer fire investigator for the 4th Judicial District, a reserve police sergeant for Woodmore Police Department, and a reserve police officer with the Manitou Springs Police Department in 1976. I was only 1 year old, Glenn.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. When Glenn was,
Things in perspective.
Yep. When Glenn was hired, the Woodland Park Police Department issued him a uniform consisting of a badge, a set of color brass, a long sleeve shirt, a short sleeve shirt, and 4 shoulder patches. I double-checked the list, couldn't find any pants. Times have changed, and we now issue pants, body armor, boots, and leather gear. Glenn drives up the pass 38 miles to work, which is about an hour each direction with traffic since he lives in Peyton. He had the option of working for the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, which is the jurisdiction he lives in. He could have worked for Colorado Springs PD, Fountain PD, Monument PD, Manitou Springs, Teller County Sheriff's Office, or the 4th Judicial District. He chose to be committed and work at the Woodland Park Police Department. One of the things that most people don't know about Glenn Jardin is his commission as a pastor in the Presbyterian Church. In this capacity, he has received training in pastoral care and administration of the sacraments of the church. In his career as a commissioned pastor, Corporal Jardin has presided over or assisted in the following sacramental ceremonies: 4 weddings, specifically for his granddaughter and her husband 2 years ago at his home, 1 baptism, 8 funerals, in particular, Assistant Volunteer Fire Chief Keith Ritchie, Commander James T. Rocco of the Woodland Park Police Department, Patrol Sergeant Chuck Pizzatola of the Woodland Park Police Department, and Dispatch Supervisor retired Rollin Sowell. Training in pastoral care has enabled Corporal Jardin to work more effectively with bereaved families in his duties as a detective, responding to the scenes of deceased persons and other victims of violence in the city of Woodland Park. His commitment to our city was shared by his wonderful wife, Jan. I'd like to recognize her sacrifice for a moment, because when Glenn was on call and the phone rang, she got woke up. When Glenn was hurt on the job, she helped him mend and get him back to work. When the weather was terrible outside and he was traveling home after working graveyard shift, she was waiting for him to return. I'm glad to say that some of that stress and the worries of his job are going to be going away. With that being said, I'd like to invite Jan to come up here. And Mayor, I know you have a few words and some stuff to hand out.
I do.
No, you don't have to say anything.
You don't have to say anything, unless you want to.
I'll take care of it. Oh, my God.
Beautiful.
Brought a big enough car to hold that home.
Beautiful.
Sir, I appreciate you so much. I'm always looking for you out in the, whenever we're doing an event or anything. We're both big guys, so I look for the big guy out there. I'm glad to see you here tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to give you a challenge coin, which you know what those
Thank
are.
you. Yes, sir, I do.
Challenge coin for, you're one of the first recipients, and a brand new thing by our wonderful city manager who's come up with a nice little token. I've got mine from a different aspect, but it's not the city one, so I have to do some special things to get the city one yet. But I appreciate you so much. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your service too, because I know it's a challenge.
Mayor, could we get a picture for Norma up here with you and Chief and Jan? And see, I told you, Norma, I'd take care of you.
Those are beautiful flowers.
Beautiful flowers,
They're
Jan.
beautiful.
Beautiful.
They got eucalyptus in them, too.
Can I have a little extra time to talk?
Thank you.
Time, I'm going to hand it over to Glenn.
Do you want me to go first, Glenn? Because I had a couple of things to say.
As long as I have time to rebut.
You do. You do. I just wanted to share a couple of things with Glenn, who I've known a very long time. Glenn was the DARE officer to my children in 1993 when we moved here. My children are now in their 30s. So that'll tell you, I've known him a long time, 27 years. They had such a positive experience. I'll never forget it when they were in DARE with Officer Jordan. They still have their DARE shirts. They don't fit into them anymore, but they still have them. But 16 and a half years ago, I started working at the police department before I came here to City Hall, and I worked with Glenn. At that time, Glenn was the SRO, the school resource officer, and I was in charge of the teen court program. And Glenn assisted me and helped me with that teen court program, where it became a nationally recognized program at that time. And we traveled, Glenn and I and some other police officers, we traveled nationally to present that program and train other municipalities. And so I've had a lot of fun with Glenn, learning from him. He knew what to say to the kids, and he really guided me with that program, and we made it into a great, successful program, which it still is. We went to Baltimore together. We went to Orlando together. You should have seen Glenn in Disney World. It's a sight. So,
I almost got my own character.
we had a good time. The other thing that I wanted to say is I've known Glenn as a cop, and I've seen him be very, very tough and strong when he needed to, but I also know him as a person, and I know him as a friend, and he is a very gentle human being. You'll see in a little while he'll start getting emotional, probably. He's getting emotional
What do you
right
mean
now.
a little while?
And at my tenure at the police department, we did have a few tragedies there, and he kept us all together there. He led a couple of the services that we had, as Chief DeYoung mentioned, and a couple of the funerals, and he was like our police chaplain. He kept us all together there and did a great job. Glenn can sing Happy Birthday like no other I've ever heard. If you ever need anyone to sing Happy Birthday,
Or not.
this is your guy. I'll never forget one time he was in dispatch singing Happy Birthday very loudly, and he got in trouble. So the other thing I want to tell you about Glenn is how thoughtful he is. He remembers little details and remembers things. At my house, I have a snow globe collection, and I collect snow globes from when I travel all over the place. One year Glenn went to Malaysia and I will never forget it. He brought me home a snow globe from Malaysia. It's the snow globe in my collection that's come the furthest distance ever. And I just thought it was so thoughtful. He was on a trip, and he thought of me and brought home this snow globe. So he's a very, very thoughtful guy. And I just want to say, enjoy your retirement, my friend, and I hope you get to have some crab cakes and beer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. That's part of the Baltimore saga. We can talk about that later. You don't know how hard that snow globe in Malaysia was to find. They don't have snow.
They don't have snow, right? Exactly.
Okay, so obviously that snow globe says made in China, so it's okay. But it was my pleasure to bring it. You don't know how much stuff I had to unpack to get that in my load-on luggage because I couldn't take it on my carry-on.
Well, I will treasure it.
So anyway, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Chief, officers of the Woodland Park Police Department, those that are here, and family members and honored guests. I have family here tonight from all the way from Anchorage, Alaska. So I think for the meeting they traveled the furthest.
Snow globe.
Good evening. The old adage is time flies when you're having fun, and if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Have a special meaning for me this evening. It doesn't seem possible that 29 years have passed as quickly. I don't remember getting older or wiser, for that matter. I should probably invest in some Prevagen to help the memory a bit. My first day as a paid police employee was August 18th, 1991. I had driven to Lincoln, Nebraska for DARE instructor school. I learned many things those 2 weeks, but probably at the top of the list was the appreciation for air conditioning. The activity that brought this appreciation home for me was the day we practice taught our first lesson at an elementary school in Lincoln. During this time in August, the school day starts at 6 a.m. and was dismissed by 1 p.m. The schools had no air conditioning. I was so glad our duty uniform at that time was all dark blue because the material didn't show the perspiration. On my return to Woodland Park, I wore many hats from that time forward. Victim advocate and domestic violence investigator, post-certified police officer, DARE instructor 1991 to 2006, post-certified juvenile crime investigator, firearms instructor and department armorer, school resource officer 1994 to 2006, and again in 2015 as a supervisor. TIPS trainer 2005 to the present, that's for those of you who need the math, 15 years. Juvenile alcohol grant administrator that Suzanne mentioned in our national presentations about our teen court program and our enforcement actions and the fact that our first-time offenders had the opportunity to go to teen court. And I don't know, we talked to an awful lot of people about starting programs. And Intoxilizer 5000, 5000 EN, and I-9000 instructor. And before that, I was certified on the 4011 AS. For those of you that know anything about Intoxilizers, that was a beast. And I'm glad we don't use it anymore. And other duties assigned by the chief and or his designee, and there were bunches of those jobs. Highlight of my career was working with a very nice lady at the Teller County Department of Social Services. We worked together in her role as a domestic violence coordinator and myself as a victim advocate for the police department. For the last 24 years, this nice lady has been my partner and wife. She had no illusions about being a police officer's wife. We tried to ride to work together a couple of times from our home in Falcon. But those didn't work out very well. It seems police work and leaving on time do not mix. She can tell you more about that. Another highlight was having our juvenile alcohol program selected to present the national conference twice. Our program in Woodland Park was not only based on enforcement, but also included education for our alcohol providers with the TIPS program and our ability to allow first-time offenders to participate in our teen court. Suzanne LeClaire can help explain those events in Nashville, Tennessee, and Baltimore.
What did I say? I said,
I don't know.
I went with going.
We went a lot of places. And what happened there stayed there. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I told the chief early on the summing up of 29 years and actually 40 years of service in the best small city in Colorado was not going to be easy. I say 40 years because in November 1980 I was sworn in as a reserve police officer by Ruann Voorhees, who was city clerk at the time. Larry Iverson was the chief of police. I served as reserve officer for 10 years and 8 months. Our reserve force at one time consisted of Rollins Soule, Bill Sumner, Jim Halloran, and Joe Plykin. For those who have visited the police station of late, you will notice the Wall of Fame photos for the men who have led the police department as chief. John Hogue, Mike Rulo, who recently retired from the Cripple Creek Police Department as chief, Bob Larson, and Miles DeYoung. These men have been responsible for the growth and success of the Woodland Park Police Department and the development of one of the most professional police agencies in the area. I am humbled to have served this community for so long and have the highest expectations that the citizens of Woodland Park will continue to be served by the best men and women employed by the city. In all facets of city government, Woodland Park has the best personnel in every department. It's too late for me to be sucking up. I say this from the heart. And in my experience in working with our city staff and leadership for so many years. Although personnel have changed over the years, the positions have always been filled with quality people every time. The leadership of the city council, city managers, the department heads have made the ability to have a career spanning 40 years possible. I miss the beauty of working in this community, the people we serve, my desk, morning briefing and coffee, but most of all, the people in the city departments I have come to know over the years. To my brothers and sisters at the Woodland Park Police Department, hold your heads up. Serve your citizens with pride and honor. Be safe and have fun out there. I love and miss you all. May God be with you until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Grateful community is honored to have you here and sad to see you go. But get your fishing done and traveling and whatever else you have to get done. We appreciate your retirement with a wonderful wife, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Well, this is next on the agenda. We're going to honor one of my comrades in arms, Paul Saunier, our former council member. Paul was a good friend of mine, still is a good friend of mine. I'm honored to have him in my life, and his service to the citizens of this community is above and beyond. And I love that he was willing to put himself out there for as long as he did. And sir, we've got a couple things I'd like to make sure that you understand that I'm forever grateful personally. We've got a couple things.
Assistance?
Yeah.
we go up here. I know when Norma wants you. For a picture. He's a friend. Mrs. Sonia. It is a lot being a councilmember's wife. I know that. So she deserves something too.
Absolutely. So this is a wonderful view. We're going to take some pictures. This is a wonderful thing. You get 2 challenge points. Oh, geez. Apparently, this is how you have to get those. But we've got some sentiments on the back and a nice map here. This is a real nice little thing you can put up on your wall someplace. If you want me to hold it, I'd be happy.
I can hold it too if you want me to. You good? Oh, we're good. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want? I'll show you. Okay.
I just want to thank you all. I want to thank the people of Woodland Park for electing me to the council. It was an honor to serve with my fellow council people and those who are new to the council. It's a great honor to be on council. At times it can be difficult, but not everything in life is easy. My prayer is that this council will come together and do the work for the citizens and enjoy yourselves. This is not a place just to come and not have fun. There are a lot of good people here. Have fun, enjoy what you're doing, and I thank you for your service, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul.
very much.
Thank you for your service, Paul.
Paul and I were in the foxhole together civilly a lot, and I'll never forget his wonderful assistance. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have Citizens Academy class of 2020. Karen Casey, I understand you might have a couple words.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with some of our Citizens Academy participants, and we had an incredible cohort of individuals this year. We had some robust, as I find this, robust discussions and lots of good questions. We started out in February, and the first thing that I'd like to do is thank the sponsors, because at each Academy session we have some light meals, because we start at 5:30 in the evening, and so the reason that we're able to have those meals is there are sponsors that provide that for us. And so the Swiss Chalet, Woodland Fitness Center, Domino's, Cafe Leo, Vectra Bank, and Karis all sponsored meals for us. And Karis also provided some transportation for us to get to a couple of our sites that have limited parking. And we really appreciate that. So we had 7 sessions, the first one being just an overview of the local government and history of Woodland Park, and I wanted to make sure to include an image with the former Mayor Levy providing some presentation to our cohorts. We then did planning and building and finance the second night. And then we went to water utility, so we got to get out and do some field trips and actually see what happens in some of those at the off-sites. Parks and Recreation, we were able to experience the Cultural Center and the Aquatic Center during our tours, and even the pump room, which was very loud in the pool environment. Wastewater utility, I like the image on your left, because it was such a beautiful twilight evening, and it's an amazing experience to be able to see what happens, everything that our wastewater utility does to keep us safe. Then we had a big gap because COVID walked into our nation and community, and so we took a little hiatus, but we came back together in June, and we didn't get to do our canine demonstration, so I thought it would be fitting to have a picture of Officer Bradley with Rico kind of off duty, relaxing a little bit. And then we were able, after the briefing, to have a tour this particular image on the right is of the detox area at the police department.
It's definitely not detox.
Yeah.
It's intoxilized.
It's an intoxilized room. Thank you for that. And then we ended with Public Works. And so we had our briefing here and then went up Rampart to our Public Works and our fleet maintenance facilities, where our crew chiefs showed everybody all the fleets, all the equipment, what happens on a daily basis, and I think that it was quite enlightening. You see one of our participants climbed up into the truck and enjoyed actually being able to have a little bit of experience getting up in one of those big rigs. I also wanted to give a lot of thanks to the staff and to Candy McDaniel in particular. She made sure that we had everything organized and ready to go with respect to food and a lot of other things, and I just wanted to give a shout out to her as well. And so we have some Academy T-shirts and some certificates. We would like to honor our participants, and I believe that we have 9 people here out of our 29 to be able to award those certificates and T-shirts to. And I wonder if I think Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem are going to come and help out with that. So we have a couple for council members.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Neal. Yes, actually, it would be great if all the participants, if you wouldn't mind coming up front.
Am I included?
And 2 of our council members attended the Academy as candidates, and so we're glad to have them come up here too. If you would come up in front of the dais and face the audience, that would be marvelous. Yes. And then when we're finished, please stay together so we can get some photo ops. So the first is Councilmember Robert Zuluaga.
Thank you.
And Paul Rusty Neal. Mark Weber. Oh, I feel like we're in college.
You need a little tassel more.
But wait, I'm not drunk.
Yet.
Mac McVicker. John Davis. James Rumsey. Cindy Rumsey. Catherine Nakai. Chris Shea. Don DeZellum. And Scott Davis. Yes, thank you so much. That is. I don't.
Speech.
I would like to take a picture with everybody, and then if anybody would like to say anything, if that's acceptable, Mayor. If
This is a wonderful program that Darren Tangeman came up with, and I think this is the second year we've run it, something like that, and it's tremendous exposure. Usually when we're on council, we get a one-day introduction to all of these things. You guys had several weeks, month after month, and the exposure is tremendous to understand what actually staff does in the facilities. And it's a really great program for the citizens. I would like to see more than the usual suspects. I'd like to see some people we never see up here come out, but we get who we get, and all your people are wonderful. I'm glad you participated, and hopefully as time goes on, we'll get even more people coming to this, because I think it's a great program. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you so much.
Karen, thank you for putting all this together. You did a great job.
Thank you, Karen. I am one of a number of students who attended from Charis Bible College Practical Government School. And this program that we did was fabulous in terms of seeing what happens at a local level in terms of the functioning of a city. It was fabulous. A lot of our studies at Charis are on a constitutional level, on a historic level, and to drill it down to the city level, this was just a terrific program. So anyone who hasn't taken this program yet, I encourage you to sign up next year, because it's stellar. So thank you all.
Thank you. Class of 2020, you're supposed to throw your graduation caps in the air.
Can I use yours? No.
Next on our agenda is the financial report of 2020 first quarter and May 2020 sales tax report. Finance Director Emily.
Thank you, Mayor. So
Please.
following up something fun with something kind of dry, but here we go. So, so good evening, Mayor and Council. Included in your packet is the first quarter 2020 financial report. And the first quarter includes January, February, and March, which was before the COVID-19 pandemic, truly hit us. The numbers are reflective of this. So the general fund, being our main government fund, is supported mainly by sales tax. So a few points that I would like to go over is that overall 18% of the general fund budget had been expended 25% of the way through the year, 25% being the first quarter, of course, and 20% of the total general fund was received 25% of the way through the year. And the Culture and Recreation Fund had received 22% of revenues, 25% of the way through the year. It will be interesting to see what the second quarter brings, of course, being that the pool was closed for half of March and the months of April and May. So there are still, of course, restrictions and regulations today. So it will be a challenging year for the Culture and Recreation Fund, as it has been proving to be a challenging year for everyone. The other fund details and fund balances are, of course, in the report. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Council, questions? Questions? I noted that we were running a little behind on revenues and expenditures. To your point, you made that point already. We don't expect to make up that ground, but we're fine being behind in expenditures always. But your second quarter numbers are already in. Obviously, maybe not in a journaled or something like that. When do you expect that we might see second quarter numbers?
The second quarter, planning on presenting that the second meeting in August. So
Okay.
that's, yes, we do have the sales tax revenues in, but you are correct that we don't have all of the journal entries complete. We're working on that right now. So my staff, they're excellent. They've been working really hard to get all of this in. Of course, COVID and the closures with the pandemic slowed us down a little bit, but we're making up for that now. And as you noted, Mayor, the revenues they reflect sort of what we would expect historically, as far as summer months being the busier months of the year here. So we do usually make up, even though it's 20%, or sorry, 18%, it's 18% has been expended, 20% of general fund revenues have been received as far as what was budgeted. And we do usually make that up in the summer months.
If you wouldn't mind, next report, if you could do a year-on-year, past 2 years, maybe comparison when we get to that point, because it'll be helpful for council to understand where we're at historically, and we understand there's this situation, but without us going back to our books or research, if you wouldn't mind adding that to your report next time.
And thank you, Mayor, for noting that, because I did want to mention, so normally the quarterly reports have a comparison where it compares the previous year, but this year, or for the first quarter, I didn't have a first quarter report for 2018, and that predated me, so I didn't have that the data to enter. So, but you'll see that in the second and third quarter reports because I did prepare those, as you might recall, last year.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Council, any other comments or questions? None? Thank you. Thank you, Emily.
All right.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. Thank you. So the next report that's also included in your packet is the May sales tax. And so as you can see from those numbers, the city continues to be in good shape as far as sales tax returns. The insight into this being that our grocery retailers, our large retailers, continue to do very well. So sales tax for May 2020 is 10.4% over May 2019 and 9.4% ahead of 2019 year to date. And not surprisingly, the decrease we are seeing in lodging tax, 43% below 2019 returns, is due to the closures and travel restrictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was mentioned in the last month's report as well. But overall, the city, we are in very good shape as far as sales tax revenue, and I continue to be optimistic for the remainder of 2019, despite the challenges and uncertainties we're all facing. So, again, I want to thank my staff for all of their hard work in helping enter a lot of the data that gets compiled into the reports that I prepare. And thank you all, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
Council, anything? No? Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Additions, deletions, or corrections to agenda? I think we have none. Consent calendar. We have two items on the consent calendar. First one, approved minutes from July 2nd. Suzanne Leclerc.
Thank you. As Mayor Carr stated, there are two items on this evening's consent calendar. The first item being the approval of the minutes from the there's a mistake, a July 2nd regular council meeting, and then also the approval of the June 2020 statement of expenditures.
Thank you. Council, I'd like to hear a motion if we have one.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Labar,
Yes.
Neal,
Yes.
Path, Zuluaga.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
I don't have the sign-up sheet.
Oh, let me get that.
Looks like we have actually there's two people signed up on the same line for public comments on items not on the agenda. April Babin, please. State your name and your municipality of residence, please.
Yes, my name is April Babin, and my address is 1276 Terry Lane, Woodland Park, Colorado.
Go for it.
Okay.
You're on.
Sorry, I was like, sorry. So what I'm here for is we apparently have, I don't even know what to call it. But basically, I am one of the GMs at Shining Mountain Golf Course, and I would like to help generate some revenue in town by opening up my parking lot for overnight stay for 1 or 2 nights, not for camping, but as for an overnight stay, so that we can have people come here into town and generate money. We just had finances presented and we're down. And I can be associated with an RV group that is for golfers, and what they do is travel, and everybody's traveling right now instead of flying and everything else. And this group only stays in places, other golf courses, either in their parking lots or their campgrounds or whatever. And I would like to be able to ask for for the summer, just for the summer right now, allowance, in a sense, to have this capability to help support others in the town, along with myself. I'm not going to, lie about that, but I would like to be able to do that. Now, I started that, and then I got in trouble, because apparently camping in private or public, a non-campground place is not allowed, and that is an ordinance. But you can apply for a 24 to 96 hour temporary permit, but I don't know who's going to be coming and going out of my parking lot. And so I'd have to do that all the time. And so I thought maybe I could have a variance for the summer to help generate money, basically, is what I'm asking for.
Well, we certainly honor your request, and the initiative, the planning department obviously has control over that, and the ordinances, they may or may not have a mechanism to accommodate that. I would ask our planning director to weigh in if she wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Carr.
Rob, it doesn't sound like her.
You're on. We can hear you.
Okay. April is correct
that there is a section of the municipal code that allows for city council to grant parking permits for 24 to 96 hours. These have been applied for with city council for special events, not for the entire summer. So the Rock and Gem Show have come forward years ago. The Powwow used to get camping permits. So that provision is in the code. However, the Shining Mountain Golf Course is a planned unit development, a PUD, and it has very specific uses allowed within that PUD. Camping or overnight storage of RVs or rigs is not one of those uses. There is a process that if you want, a property owner wants to change their use in a PUD, then it's an amendment to the PUD, and that amendment is reviewed by the Planning Commission. So there is a process already in place to be able to do this on a temporary basis, but it's spelled out in the code.
And it takes time.
And it takes at least 30 days.
Yeah.
And I do understand that, and I respect that. But under the circumstances with COVID, do certain businesses in town have time for us to have the time to do that, when I have access to over 100,000 RV and campers and people staying here to help businesses in town? Because when they come here, I tell them you can go here, and there's different places you can go in town and stay, and so I'm trying to promote and help, knowing that. And so if we were to, and I hate to say it, but if we went through the process of going step by step, and I don't want to change, I want to change the PUD, but right now I'm just asking for the summer, just right now because of COVID. could we put it into action right away and then have a cutoff point? Like, I don't care, September 1st, end of September, October 1st, I don't care, so that we could have access for the town now.
So I've kind of gone past our procedures. Normally, we just have it one way. You present something to us, and we take it under consideration. So I would ask that that's where we're at this point. Thank you for your input. We'll look at this. Whatever. Our city attorney's not here right now. With the planning director, she's laid it out pretty clearly what we can do. But thank you for bringing it to council's attention. I didn't know about that specific situation. In the future, I think that might be something interesting to look at. But right now, you're looking at a long process, and so we're not going to get in a back and forth kind of thing on comments. Not on. I kind of let it go a little bit further. But I was interested in this situation, and the planning director helped us out here. Thank you. Next up, I have Barb Roy. She was here a second ago. There she is. Barb, if you would state your name and city of residence, please.
My name is Barbara Roy. I'm another manager at Shining Mountain Golf Course, and I live at 421 Timber Lane in Woodland Park.
If you could get closer to the mic, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Just pulled in.
A lot of people have been talking in that. Anyways, so yes, I live at 421 Timber Lane in Woodland Park. So I have copies of what I'm going to talk about that I had made for everybody, so you can.
Is that okay, Mayor, that I pass these out?
Please.
Thank you, Susie.
If you could hold yourself to the 5 minutes, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been practicing for a couple of weeks. I should be all right. So this is our timeline for code enforcement and city official contact with Shining Mountain Golf Course, here on referred to as SMGC, staff regarding COVID and municipal code enforcement. This goes along with the reason that April Babin is requesting the variance for RVs to park. So on May 29th, 2020, Officer Wadham, the code enforcement officer, it was her first visit to Shining Mountain Golf Course. She ate dinner with several officers, dropped off the COVID regulation information packet. On June 5th, Officer Wadham made a second visit. She made contact with RV owners who were patronizing the golf course during normal business hours, informed them that they could not park in our parking lot and had to move, and there was nowhere within Woodland Park city limits that they could park without receiving a ticket. At this time, she also threatened to give April Babin a ticket for allowing them to camp in our parking lot. This we considered our first verbal warning for allowing camping. Shining Mountain Golf Course staff started to investigate municipal code definitions and regulations to see if we were in fact violating any municipal code. On June 8th, Officer Wadham made her third visit, made contact with another RV owner in the parking lot and informed them they're not allowed to camp in our parking lot and had to move. We considered that our second verbal warning. At that time, Officer Wadham acclaimed, when I had asked her why she was making so many trips to the golf course and who was complaining so that we could do something about it, she claimed that night shift police department officers were seeing violations and requested her to address them. Shining Mountain Golf Course staff observed officer body cam did not appear to be on. Golf course staff contacted Harvest Host, which is the company April referred to, that allows golfers when they come into town to golf at our facility and then stay overnight for a second day of golf or traveling the next day. We did contact them and have them remove us from their host for courses listed for overnight parking, if and until we could confirm that we had violated any municipal codes. On June 11th, Officer Wadham made her fourth visit. She gave us a verbal warning for COVID compliance, instructed staff on mask wearing, gloves, 6-foot demarcation on the floors to guide social distancing. In answer to that, we did have 6-foot demarcation in place in the pro shop. We added more to the entrance and bar area, blocked off the walk-up counter at the bar entrance, and posted signs, moved bar stools. On the 18th of June, she made her 5th visit, found an unregistered vehicle in the parking lot during normal business hours, and threatened to ticket April Babin for allowing the unregistered vehicle to be stored on the property. This being normal business hours and the unregistered vehicle belonging to a golf course patron, this was not something that April Babin was personally responsible for. The officer then made no observable attempt to further investigate the unregistered vehicle, like locating the owner or advising other PD of the supposed unregistered or unsafe vehicle. That evening was also a city council meeting where it was announced that Shining Mountain Golf Course planned to have a 4th of July event to support the mayor and council introductions to the public after the recent election. On the 19th, Officer Wadham made her 6th visit, gave another verbal warning for COVID regulations, condiment containers, claimed to have seen staff outside without masks, staff in food service and bar wearing PPE. We made several adjustments to that as well. On the 22nd of June, she made her 7th visit, claimed there was another RV in the parking lot overnight, Sunday the 21st into Monday the 22nd. Notified the officer that there was no RV when we left that evening around 10 p.m. or when staff arrived at 6 a.m. Monday morning. Overnight security that was also in an RV on property advised they didn't have any contact with an RV that evening. The officer actually pretty unprofessionally admonished April, saying, "I can't believe you're allowing camping after I warned you." She then served the written warning 20-0788.
Mayor Carr?
Yeah.
May I?
Well, I was going to tell you you've got 2 minutes
Okay.
to wrap it up.
So basically, I'll cut it very, very short. You guys can read this. So basically, April received a verbal warning and then written warning for this RV that was in the parking lot. The written warning was given to April with her name, her driver's license, everything personally to her for an RV she had nothing to do with. When it comes down to that, we were looking at the Woodland Park Municipal Code, and with that warning, in the municipal code, there is absolutely no definition under the section in definitions for camping. There is, however, a definition of parking lot, which is, I'm looking for the page because I had to skip, an area within a building where motor vehicles may be stored for the purpose of temporary, daily, or overnight off-street parking. Us being private property, overnight off-street parking went with that. Later on, we also got a warning from Officer Wadham for COVID compliance regulations after Officer Wadham had not actually entered the building that day. That's going to be the last page there. Officer Wadham basically gave this warning along with a Woodland Park Police Department contact card saying, "This is just a document that I had contact with you today." The ticket was written for 11:30 when the officer didn't show up on property until 11:59. She gave us the warning for no mask, no gloves, no 6-foot demarcation, which never actually came into the building that day.
You've got 30 seconds, please.
Our biggest concern with all of this, and if you guys want to look at it, that's great. Our biggest concern is that Officer Wadham is untrained. We found out that she has very little to no supervision from Woodland Park Police Department, that she answers to the city planning director. And our biggest concern with this is that Officer Wadham is going to get herself into a situation where it puts Woodland Park Police Department in bad light, as well as diminishes the relationship that the police department has built with their citizens over the years. And she is a fully uniformed police officer wearing a badge, carrying a gun, and is not actually aware of municipal code changes, the nomenclature of municipal code to fit the ticket that she's writing. It is not a complaint about the officer. It is a concern for the officer's position and how it is held between the police department and the city, and the lack of clarity in that. And we're hoping that you would look into it just on the sense of clarity and making sure that the officer knows exactly what she's doing and what she is supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I have nobody else on 6.
Mayor Carr? May Planning Director Riley speak for a moment? She
doesn't have to, but if she wants to.
She's Courtney Wadham's supervisor.
It's up to you.
This is a surprise to me. And just glancing at some of the misrepresentations in here, I would just advise you to take this with a grain of salt, and that if you would like rebuttals, specifically as to how we have professionally handled the Shining Mountain issues to help them be successful, staff would be happy to do that.
Please do that, Sally. This is totally unacceptable to me. So I would like to see something in writing, please.
I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I reviewed the information at another time when they brought it to my attention, and I'm glad that they did. I'm very concerned about this. I do not find it to be a grain of salt issue. I find it to be a serious issue that needs to be addressed by the planning department. And to me, it comes across as a targeting issue, and I would like to be convinced otherwise.
Let us have that opportunity.
I would ask that the other question was the coordination with the PD. You folks can handle that internally, and I would welcome that interaction.
Mayor, City Manager Tangeman would like to speak.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the. I wish we had the Zoom thing up here.
I think Rob can finesse something.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Darren.
I want to let the council know that this had been brought to our attention probably about 3 weeks ago or so, and we reviewed it and found. I will tell you that we found the visits for the RV. Obviously, we've already talked about it. We're in violation of the municipal code. I don't see how that can be refuted, but we can write up a specific report to City Council and get that information to you so that you can see, I guess, the full story behind Officer Wadham's engagements with the golf course. So I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Thank you.
I'd also like to request a write-up of any similar type of activity with any other specific business that may or may not, anything that rises to this level of tickets and warnings being written for any business in the city.
We have done
let's be clear, there was
warnings or whatever. What I'm asking for, I'd like to know if there's another business in this town that has the same volume of this sort of interaction with Officer Wadham's. That's what I'm looking for.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make a comment. I've had a conversation with April Babin as well about all of this, and I've had a conversation with the city manager about it as well and expressed my concern. And I am always wanting to hear both sides of the story before I reach any judgment. So I look forward to the staff's response, and I'll reserve any judgment for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to unfinished business. And first up is 7A. We're going to open up some public comment on this one. We don't normally, but we will. We're going to discuss the allocation of the coronavirus relief funds. We have several activities going on there. We finished our applications with DOLA. Set up various. We've gone through all the protocols we need to with DOLA. We have a bunch of input that we've received on a survey that's ongoing. It's an ongoing survey. It's on the website, city website, and I welcome all the citizens and businesses and nonprofits to execute those surveys because they will be entirely helpful for us. Tonight's item is basically a discussion, first pass discussion. We have a couple things we might be able to come up with, but we're not going to come up to a final determination. We've determined that we're going to handle internally the management of these funds. The city has certain expenditures that they predict and or have already expended. We're looking to set up 3 pots of money, and I propose a certain number, but that's up to council. The first pass would be $300,000 pool for small businesses, $100,000 for nonprofits, and $100,000 for residents. And at September 30th, we look at how those are working. And if they're not working, we'll reallocate those monies around. By then, we'll have a clearer view of different activities and the ingenuity of the COVID impacts on this. So we're working on an application, and the application will be done shortly, next week sometime, and we will start accepting applications from small businesses, from nonprofits and residents, and we'll have more clear definitions. We have a whole list of things that DOLA will not allow us to fund, including revenue replacement, and so we do have a number of items that we know we can't do, but the imagination of the population and the businesses will tell us more. At this point, I would welcome opening up the discussion with the rest of council.
Go ahead. Val, could you, Mayor Carr, could you give me the breakdown of that dollar amount? Because I had.
This was just a proposal that I threw out there. It was just picking numbers out of the air. $300,000 to small businesses, $100,000 for nonprofits, and $100,000 for residents. It may be that it shifts around quite a bit because, but that's an initial pass. And it's just.
I just was wondering. I was going to ask the same question. I was not involved. I just wondered where those numbers came from. I've never heard of
I'm
it.
just throwing them out for discussion.
Okay.
So we can have
Just
6
curious.
different opinions on it. Yeah, it's just a starting point.
A mark on the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Just sounded like that had been
picked some
determined, and I
numbers.
just wondered
There's
when.
the city manager said there's about $500,000 left out of the fund that the city won't be probably going after.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
That's how I divided it up.
Appreciate it.
You know,
Do the other council members, Councilmember Paff and Zuluaga, are you okay with those numbers as a starting point?
For discussion, I just learned today we have about, 49, Rob? 49 residential feedback and 12 or 13? 37 and 12. So 39 residential and 12 business are our feedback numbers, so those numbers could change. Yeah.
Yeah, our
That's for
survey
starting.
is dynamic. It'll be, it'll mushroom.
Sure.
People are we just got it going this week, basically. So, those are the things that we've tentatively put out there for, and so we will be coming forth with an application and more determination types of things. But we're going to manage it in-house. We've got capable people to do that in-house. We already talked about that. And yeah, my numbers are just, feel free to change them.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you mind if I chime in real quick?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. I sent City Council the documents I had a chance to speak with City of Monument, or Town of Monument this week, and they've created a similar program. They were actually awarded funds earlier than most because the larger counties got early care funds, and so some of these towns like Fountain, Monument, El Paso County, they received the funds earlier and have been vetting through the process and getting their programs in place before the rest of the state. Other counties are like Jefferson County. The ones that were, I think, over 500,000 got those revenues early. Just to kind of touch on some of their application and some of their recommendations, I think you hit on it pretty closely in terms of the dollar amounts that you've recommended. They had an allocation for $300,000 for their businesses in their distribution. Some of the things that they've done is they've set goals and objectives or objectives for it, and they've also identified specifics in terms of what types of assistance that might be available to the businesses and nonprofits. And I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just quickly read them, what they have. Is that okay? Okay. Rent or mortgage assistance is one, utility payments, employee payroll, accounts payable and other bills, payment of fixed debt, and adapt and or repurpose their business to serve the community. So those are the general areas that most of the El Paso County towns in the county have focused their care funds towards. They also put a limit of $10,000 as a maximum grant that they would award. So I'll leave that there. They established goals and objectives for the town for business relief to retain and support town businesses that have been negatively affected by the disruption of services during the COVID crisis. They're supporting local businesses. We can maintain a vibrant, healthy local economy, encourage and support diverse and high-quality retail, provide assistance to essential interior buildings, assist businesses in maintaining their current workforce were some of the objectives. One of the things that I do see that they went and defined what a small business was, and that was some of the things that we've talked about already. They defined a small business as defined by the Small Business Administration, physically located and operating within the town, their town boundaries, and having a current business license is the way the Small Business Administration defines small business. So they had that. They also had inclusions of including locally owned franchises as a possible recipient of these funds. But they did focus on brick and mortar. I know we talked about whether brick and mortar or home businesses, as Councilmember Paff said, that there's a lot of home businesses in that it's the fastest growing sector of our businesses in the nation. So home-based businesses are not eligible under their definition. And those are the main things. I think it comes through pretty well in terms of it's a pretty good vetted document. I sent to City Council if you want to look at it, and it could serve to help establish criteria for the City of Woodland Park. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. My opinion, in my opinion only, of course, is that we ought to look at all the inventive. We're really trying to help people who are impacted by coronavirus, and that goes all the way from residents to nonprofits to small business. And we talked briefly this morning, Darren and I, about trying. It's difficult to put limits on things when there's a lot of people who are impacted by things that we don't even imagine. So we will start out with a certain set of parameters. As far as limits on, if we say it's a limit to X amount, I suggested, I guess to my computer at home, that we have some sort of initial ceiling, but let's say, for instance, we set the ceiling at $10,000, which I think is too high for our town, but and somebody put in an application for 25, we would start with the 10. I mean, everybody here can imagine a different scenario, but we can't have one person or one business eat up the whole fund. And so there's going to be a lot of common sense involved, and I trust the common sense really of the people involved. Darren and the city manager and I are going to look at anything that doesn't really fit, and then if we can't come to a conclusion, we're going to bring it back to City Council. So I think there's a lot unknowns here, and I think if we have a list of 10 things, we're going to be in trouble. But certainly the things that were talked about with business there is a good starting point.
Maybe if just from what you were saying struck a thought in my silly head that maybe if they did come with a need of 25 and we address all the applications we get and we have money left, maybe we revisit some of those.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a stepwise thing.
That makes sense.
We'll go through the first pass and see where we're at.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe even have a second round of applications.
And we might have a tiered thing based on we have a couple of people who have some real good experience here that are going to come up and talk about some of this stuff.
Makes sense.
We have we have to consider how much, we're going to do our best due diligence to understand who's already been, we don't want any double dipping, obviously. It sounds like a lot of money, and it's a lot of money to me, but it isn't that much money that we can afford people double dipping, and so that's going to be difficult. It really will, but we'll do the best we can. And I think common sense and the good intentions of the people involved are going to be helpful. Others, I would welcome. We have. Councilmember Neal.
Well, I want to go back to the limits because, real quick math, $10,000 limit, you can blow through that in the small businesses.
30, yes.
30.
That's right.
And in the citizen, you're really talking about 10. I think that limit has got to be much smaller to start with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then,
like 1,000 for a
1,000
resident or something.
to start with, and then we see what the participation is, what the pain has been experienced, so that we can then adjust, upward or downward for that.
Well, and I agree. I think we don't know the whole picture.
Correct.
We can kind of imagine some of the business impacts. I think there's a lot of impacts out there with nonprofits and the residents. There's actually some significant, and I'm not going to tell them what my ideas are, but there are some significant impacts. If it's okay with council, we've got a couple of, I would say, pros here who've been through some of this that I would welcome to come up and talk, if you wouldn't mind, and then maybe we can do some more discussion. Catherine Perry, you're signed up to speak. Please come forth.
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine Perry, 330 Ponderosa Court here in Woodland Park. And I'm standing before you tonight not just as a citizen of Woodland Park, but early in April I was pressed into service as the manager of the PPP program for Park State Bank and Trust. And just to give you a little background, in a 6-week period, we distributed over $5 million. We entertained over 300 applications for PPP funds. Are all of you familiar with the PPP program? Funded 206 of those loans so far. We are still actively entertaining applications. I've got one that's going to make it across the finish line tomorrow. Represented 1,020 jobs so far protected with that money. But $5 million sounds like a lot of money. Your $500,000 sounds like a lot of money. But if you take 1,020 jobs divided into $5 million, that averages $5,000 per employee. That represented 2.5 months of payroll per employee. So that's someone making $2,000 a month. If you take 160 hours in a given month, that's on average for the Park State Bank lending $12.50 an hour. So we were funding over 1,000 barely above minimum wage employees in Teller County. Of our 206 loans, 97 of those were within the city limits of Woodland Park. And it ran the gamut from long-established businesses, restaurants that all of you know and love, down to those home-based businesses. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that the home-based businesses, the Schedule C filers, the self-employed sole proprietors, they were qualified for significant unemployment funding that they normally are not qualified for, as well as the PPP funding. Nonprofits were qualified for the PPP funding. From what I've seen on the inside, the nonprofits have received significant funding and a lot of private donations as well. Individual sole proprietors have received some significant federal funding from multiple avenues. My concern is the small businesses, and my concern is that you guys are about to undertake a process that the poor, maligned, made fun of SBA undertook under duress. During this period, has anybody been as maligned as the SBA? But they were trying. But they had no guidebook to follow, no precedents to follow. They began the PPP under duress, just trying to get emergency funding out there to the businesses, to the sole proprietors. The flaws in their logic only became evident after they'd started distributing funds. And I think that's the danger you guys encounter, is what seems like the best of good intentions, and we know where good intentions can take us. As you start this process, if you don't rely on some expertise of others who've already dealt with this situation, you're going to encounter the very same pitfalls that the SBA did. They started out with a broad criteria. That same criteria, the loans that are still being made today. You simply had to certify, I was affected. Well, I was affected by, say, an electrician who for a few days the phone didn't ring, but then as things began to roll back together, he was busy the whole time. Construction has not slowed. Compare that to a restaurant whose doors were shut for nearly 2 months, and still to this day, 4 months into this process, they're capped at 50% capacity, and it may get worse. They may have more restrictions coming. Think about our movie theater. He hasn't been able to have a first-run movie since the middle of March. So the PPP gave funding in equal measure to everyone that applied. There was an algorithm. Your financials fit that algorithm. Funding was equitable. And yet, businesses were not equitably affected by COVID. So that's my concern there. The SBA, once they saw that it was kind of the snowball rolling down the hill, they tried to tighten up. They put some new procedures in. Well, then that ended up unintended damaging the businesses that most desperately needed the funds. They began to listen to the outcry, the seasonal businesses that said, wait, I make most of my money during only one part of the year. It's unfair to apply this algorithm to me. So they came up with, okay, you had to use from March 15th to June 30th. I explained to seasonal business, we have a lot of them around here, over and over and over, that's a fair and equitable algorithm for you because we're trying to replace income from that same time period. But with the outcry of seasonal businesses, before you know it, the SBA changed the rules, and then you could use your summer numbers as a seasonal business. But that wasn't fair because the revenue we're replacing was that March and April revenue. But the businesses that were on the ball and got their loans first, they'd already used the first set of rules. Then you had the new set of rules. And we're now on, I think, number 19 of the SBA's set of rules. So it is a slippery slope for you guys. The SBA lost credibility because their good intentions quickly snowballed out of hand. And I think the city risked that same situation. You guys could lose credibility if you don't really think through this process before you start taking in applications. There are businesses that were thriving before COVID, and they may shut their doors if you guys aren't allocating the funds for the highest and best impact for the whole of Woodland Park. So if you take individuals with their desperate plight, who may or may not have been able to file for unemployment, who may or may not have been bothered to fill out the PPP paperwork, and now they're desperate, you're going to hear a lot of sob stories, but you run the risk of some of our key businesses closing their doors as a result. You know, if Hungry Bear shuts their doors, what does that look like for the city of Woodland Park? Not just our citizens that love to go there and get their good bacon, but every tourist that comes through this town. It's the donut mill, the Hungry Bear. So I think you guys need to take a step back from this and think about your unintended consequences, consult with some experts, and really, really think through your algorithm before you start the process. You know, when the PPP started, the SBA was hindered in the fact that true impact could not be measured at that point. Well, now we're at a point where businesses and even individuals, their true impact can be measured. Second quarter 2020 versus second quarter 2019, easy, simple. You can see the difference. Use that as a ratio, a fair ratio among all businesses, because some were impacted a little bit and some were impacted a lot. And if a business can't produce financials, they're not strong enough for you to be funneling these funds to them. You know, if a home business closes its doors because it's not making enough money selling whatever multi-level marketing product they're selling, does that impact the city of Woodland Park as a whole? Probably minuscule. If the Hungry Bear closes their doors, how does that impact all of us and their employees and the reputation of the city of Woodland Park? And finally, I'd just like to close by saying, in my opinion, most importantly, no one involved in the process should be allowed to apply for any of the funds. If you're determining the criteria, the algorithm, if you're reviewing applications, recuse yourself. Banks were not allowed to apply for any CARES Act funds. We went through it with 50% employees. We did all those things, had to provide PPE, but we were not allowed to apply for funds because we were distributing them. Anyone involved in that process should not be a part of the recipients. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Papp.
I think all of those points are good points. As I said in our work session related to this, it's my opinion that any of these sorts of programs are not useful. I would have voted against the PPP program in Congress, and actually the major problem with the PPP plan in Congress was not just those minuscule details, not minuscule, but myriad of details that you gave. I think the biggest part of the program problem was that the money was given to large businesses and not to small businesses. So let's just put that on the table here. And I'm talking about the federal PPP program. So when we consider it, as I mentioned in the work session, I think we have to make sure we're favoring the right types of businesses. That's a challenging thing. I think any government money spent to stimulate and or fix an economy that was harmed and destroyed in some cases, in certain sectors more than others, by the government itself, then that's a disincentive to restrain the government from making that same kind of stupid mistake the next time. It was a stupid mistake to shut down the economy, and I'm strongly in favor of us being very cautious about how we will distribute it. The numbers that the mayor presented, I think, are roughly, fine place to start and kind of hit the points here, but we need to be very, very cautious and take into account much of what you said in your presentation, because this could get very out of hand. Particularly, by the way, those making the decisions having any financial benefit in it is an extremely difficult thing to do, and again, just underscores the problems with these sorts of programs to begin with as well. Because I'm not a fan of the money going out in the manner that it is, but I am a big fan of us showing great precaution and also focusing this money on helping businesses that truly need it. So I think we can do that. I think we have discussed in our work session the limited way to go about that. I think those guidelines that I think most of us agreed upon in that work session are useful for us to start with, and I would hearken us back to that as well as we proceed.
I will mention that we are getting more and more feedback from DOLA and other entities about we have originally, a couple weeks ago, we got the list of thou shalt not and thou shalts, and that list both those lists will expand. Darren's getting feedback on that almost daily, and so those lists of ineligible expenditures is expanding, and we'll have a lot clearer guidance from the people who are funding this as we go. Councilmember Zuluaga.
Mrs. Perry, thank you for your assessment, analysis, and track record here. Looks like your numbers, you deal with about tenfold what we've been asked to deal with here. One of the things I didn't hear you comment on, and I wondered if now, 19 iterations later, what of the 120 fundings that you've done, if you look at that as a cross-section of Woodland Park, how many of those, in hindsight, are well-targeted and how many were just folks who jumped in, got in, and took advantage of it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like you said, the Hungry Bear versus network marketing business. When you look at that sampling, how many of those were like spot on, helpful in
To
versus
clarify, the 19 iterations is the SBA has issued 19, and it's even the most ironic term for it, interim final rules. So, even they don't see the irony of this ridiculous process. So we've been subject to those rulings. It's not the banks, Vectra, Park State, we've not had any latitude. We're not making lending decisions. We're applying the SBA algorithm. And if they're qualified, if they've got the right paperwork, they are given a loan. And to clarify, we made, at this point, 206
right, 206,
loans.
right.
And it wouldn't be fair of me to say how many of those are spot on. I have my opinion because I've seen the financials intimately of all 206 of those. I can honestly say all 206 met the criteria. They were qualified. And therein lies the rub, because the SBA, in an emergency situation, got out some guidelines by which it was simply too broad. And so I could honestly say a large percentage of those did not desperately need the funds. I can also say a large percentage of those, the funds they received through the PPP barely scratched the surface of what they're still enduring. And that's where I'd like to see you guys with the benefit of time now, because you have the ability to see the actual impact in a financial statement. That wasn't available during the PPP process. But now you have the benefit of hindsight of how much impact, measurable impact, did they really experience.
Yeah, we've talked about the financials. When I was on community investment, I insisted on financials, and we finally got to that point where we really started to understand need. And so the lessons you've learned, and we're going to have Shannon Anderson come up here and talk about her lessons. We welcome those inputs, frankly.
I would say I would love to 100% endorse what Darren said about requiring a business license. Any business that's not following the established procedures and they're not properly registered before this process even started, they should be disqualified. We should favor those businesses that are working with the city, complying with city guidelines, and that having an active business license should be, in my opinion, a foundation of qualification for this process.
Thank you. I would welcome, Mayor Pro Tem LaBarre.
I just had a really quick question because unfortunately I had to miss the workshop. With the experience that Mrs. Perry has and Mrs. Anderson have, I don't know if this was recommended or suggested, but I would really appreciate that we would be able possibly to work hand in hand with both of these women for their advice and experience, and they already have an intimate knowledge of people that have applied, and I really think that they could give us significantly important and professional feedback that we could use.
I agree. It was kind of what I was mentioning as lessons learned that they can import to us.
I would really appreciate it if they could be a part of the continuing process with us and working with us.
I was going to say the same thing, Mr. Mayor. I think that it would be extremely valuable if they would be willing to advise the council or their subcommittee that would be working with this so that we can glean their experience in doing what we're going to do. And it would be very helpful, and why reinvent the wheel?
So if they may, we will ask for initial input. We've talked about this, a few of us have talked about this. We're not really wanting to get a committee going because it's just another layer that we have. But if they could draft some input and lessons learned for input to the manager, that would be terrific.
Mayor, I'll chime in. I agree with you 100%, and we could certainly, if they're willing to work with us, be a part of drafting that initial process and making sure we got the right criteria available for for the applications and lessons learned. So 100% behind that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask if Shannon Anderson would like to come up, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shannon Anderson. I am the market president for Vector Bank here in Woodland Park and also a small business owner. My address is 602 County Road 511 in Divide. And I first just want to thank you all for giving Catherine and I the opportunity to give you some of this information, the challenges that we faced, and some of the lessons that we learned. It really shows a lot that you guys are listening to us to better prepare yourselves for the distribution of these CARES funds. Because coming up with a fair and equitable way to distribute these funds is going to be a challenge and very important. I'm really here, I know Catherine talked a little bit about the details of the PPP, and I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that the PPP was really meant for payroll. So these funds were established for businesses to retain their employees through the COVID crisis and to be able to keep them on payroll. Many of the businesses that I dealt with actually retained employees while they were not open. They were still paying them even though their business was closed, and that's what they primarily used these funds for. We have heard that there has been some discussion that maybe one of the determining factors in the decisions of the distribution of the CARES Act will play an effect if a business received a PPP loan or not. And I just want to give you a little bit of information on why that should not be a determining factor if they receive those PPP funds or not. First of all, reminder, it was meant for payroll. As you discussed earlier with the CARES funds, that there are many other ways for those funds to be utilized by businesses, whereas the PPP was primarily for payroll. When it was first established, the calculation was based on an average monthly payroll, 2.5 times that amount. Well, we're 5.5 months into that now. So most of the businesses that did a PPP loan, they exhausted their funds, some within weeks, some within a month or two. We're 5.5 months in. There are still businesses that are not in fully operational mode because of restrictions that are still in place. So even if a business received a PPP loan, they are still struggling. There are many businesses that are still struggling. So please do not discount these businesses simply because they received a loan. There are many businesses that did not receive a PPP loan, and there are many reasons why. I just want to touch on a few. One, some businesses, they didn't apply. They did not think that it was going to affect them. Some business cash cycles, depending on what they are, they may not even see the result of the pandemic until now or even a few months from now. Towards the end of the year, we may not really know the outcome of how these businesses are affected for quite some time. Some did not apply because they were not eligible. The SBA specifically said that they had to pay W-2 payroll. So if they were not paying payroll legally, or maybe a business did draws and distributions instead of W-2 income, they were not eligible for the PPP. There were a handful of businesses that withdrew their applications when they realized the eligibility requirements. So once they realized that they had to be able to prove that they were in need of these funds and that they were attesting to these needs, they withdrew their application. So there are some businesses that are doing very well and they applied for the PPP loan, but didn't necessarily need that. So I would ask that the decision makers really look at the businesses and see if they are in financial need of these funds. Recently, actually this week, Governor Polis signed 2 bills that are going to affect small businesses tremendously in the upcoming years. If you haven't heard of the 2 bills that he signed, 2 of many, one of them is the guaranteed sick time for employees that many of our small businesses here do not pay their employees now for sick time. This will now be a requirement starting January 1 of 2021. And there are also increases in unemployment insurance. And these 2 bills that Polis signed are in direct reflection of the COVID crisis. So businesses are already struggling, and they're going to continue to struggle in the upcoming years with these new requirements. Emotions and opinions are very strong with small businesses right now. I encourage you to speak to some of them if you're out shopping, if you're eating at any of their restaurants. Really talk to the owners. Get the street truth on how they feel, what their struggles are, and what they are dealing with. I do have a few comments that I'd like to read that are straight from some local business owners. One of them says, small businesses are the backbone of employment in this country, yet we are increasingly being taxed and regulated more and more. Government, at whatever level, will continue to put pressure on small businesses to raise more money for their programs and redistribution of wealth. Another one said, I truly believe these 2 bills will force more closures of small businesses. Another one, these latest bills will force small businesses to eliminate W-2 employees and change to contract workers because of the cost of supporting the government feel-good bills, and will make impossible for the average small business owner to have employees in place, and therefore eliminate the benefits that these bills are trying to expand. I did want to touch on one comment that I believe Darren said, that the El Paso County funds were not necessarily looking at home-based businesses. And as you all remember, when COVID came out, one of the recommendations from the governors was if you were able to work from home, to work from home. So I know, I was actually thinking back there, I know a handful, probably at least 10 or 20 businesses that were in brick and mortar that then decided to work from home because of those suggestions. So I would also ask you to not just discount a home-based business because it's a home-based business and they're not a brick and mortar. I personally have friends who their home office is, their business is in their home office. One is a CPA, and she has employees that come to her home every day. So those are examples of true legitimate businesses that operate out of their own home. So please do not discount those as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Council, any questions? So I would welcome if the 2 of you have the time, and I know that's probably impossible because you're very busy people, to draft a 1-pager lessons learned, and some of these inputs that you've said to us here today are excellent comments for us to consider and moving forward. And we're not casting concrete at this point, so these are all welcome ideas. And I appreciate you both of you coming forward. Thank you.
Mayor?
I do see that there is a comment. I can't see what it says,
In the chat, yeah.
but I want to make sure it's acknowledged.
Can we bring that up?
It says, I can read it, it's from Don Chappelle Neal, says she should be hired as a consultant to city council in this project. I think it probably was referring, I think the agreement that both Shannon and Catherine would be great partners in helping establish the foundation of this program.
Yep, I think we've kind of talked about that. All right, any further comments? Mr. Davis, please.
Thank you. Scott Davis, 220 Vaquero Senda, Woodland Park. I was a recipient of the PPP program. As a real estate broker, our business was kind of shut off. But it kept me in the black. As a single parent, the only breadwinner for my family, my house, paying my water bill, stuff like that, it kept me in the black. Maybe I could have taken it out of my 401k, done a home equity line of credit, done something like that, but it was provided to me. It was about $8,100 because I don't take a huge salary, but it kept me in the black for 2.5 months. It's important not to judge based on what industry you're in, or that it's a federal program that may never have been done. It was there. This was the first time in my life I've ever taken any federal funds that may be gifted to me. But it kept me in the black. I paid my house payment. I paid my car payment. I paid my health insurance. I paid my water bill. It kept me in the black. And Park State Bank helped me do that. Catherine did a great job on that. But I don't think it was undeserved of me. I've been paying taxes since I was 8 years old. My parents had me on the payroll of their business since 1974. So I got a little bit back for all of the things that I've done. So it's really important also to look at who it affects, where I spent my money. I spend my money up here. I pay the extra food tax because it's a waste of time to drive down the hill. So I kept the money here. I paid my stuff, and I appreciated that little bit of help I got. So thank you for your time and your service, and thank Shannon and Catherine, because they did a great job.
Yes, thank you very much. I will mention that there's unintended consequences of all this to other people too. There's a lot of people who are on fixed income that were tremendously affected too. So the fact that they couldn't go on PPE or any of those things doesn't mean they weren't affected also. So we have a big task ahead of us, and we'll have to weed through all that stuff. We've got good common sense with people with good intentions, and with the nice input from people who've been through this a little bit. By the way, there's more than PPE. We've got a whole list of federal programs related to COVID, so there's all kinds of impacts, and we've actually been dictated some rules by DOLA already about that. So we'll have to weed through it and maneuver our way around all the DOLA requirements, because bottom line is they won't approve them. But we have work to do. The council has work to do, and we're not going to finish it tonight. So with that said, anybody else have any comments, council or otherwise?
There looks like there's one more chat or Q&A.
I'll just read it. Deb Miller is talking about a class that will be presented on the 22nd at 11:30, online or in person. I believe Shannon Anderson and Catherine Perry will both be presenting on the PPP program. I believe it's related to loan forgiveness, if I'm correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Time again?
Thank you.
11:30.
The 11th?
11:30 on the 22nd of July.
I think the city also put out an announcement on Facebook. Yeah. Mr. Anderson, I see you're up there.
How are you, sir? Council members, Carl Anderson, 602 County Road 511 Divide. I believe that this COVID iceberg, we are strictly at the tip of it. The repercussions of this will be felt for most of us the rest of our lives. The money that we're spending today hopefully makes somewhat or a little bit of a difference. I don't think it's truly going to keep any business alive if they're not capable of staying alive anyway. Okay? This country, our town, all towns around, gosh darn, we're riding on the Titanic and we just hit this sucker. And I think it's going to last for years. And I think for the rest of our lives, we're going to debate whether this was handled correctly by the health departments, the government, the businesses, whoever, and there will never be a consensus if we did this right. I think that we need to work on preserving those businesses that can survive and individuals that it's going to make a difference for and going to keep them in the black, as Scott Davis said. But it's going to be a difficult process to pick and choose the winners and losers in this and understand that, this is not going away in just a couple months. This, we're seeing now difficulties in the supply chain in the construction industry. You talk to Jim Olson, they're running out of materials, redwood, treated lumber, galvanized brackets that are going to take months to resupply to catch back up to speed. Well, what the heck do construction businesses do without materials to build with? This is a long-term effect, and we have just seen the tip of it. And I think you guys will spend many council meetings, many workshops speaking on this. I think rushing into any decision at this point would be a mistake, just because we have no idea of the full impact this is going to have on our community and our nation. And I wish you guys luck. It's not going to be easy. I know what these ladies went through with the banks and stuff like that and dealing with this. If you guys put in half the time that they put in, you will be exhausted in no time. So good luck with this, but I think we're just starting to see it. It's nowhere near over. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I agree with you. It's why I'm cautioning the council that we do tiptoe through this process and get more information from experts and people who've been through it. And the process, it has a time limit. We do have some time limits, but we've got some time right now, and if we're diligent about what we do and not be too rash at the beginning, we'll do ourselves a big favor per your comment. Thank you. I'm going to go early on our 9 o'clock break because the next topic may take us some time. If that's okay with council, I'd like to take about a 10-minute break. Thank you. We'll be back, Tim.
This one, right? Sherwin-Williams came out with something. I told Caroline Colbert, I said, can you believe it? It'll be one, it'll be nice for you. No, it's not. I've been on both sides of it. I'm just glad I don't do this. I've hired one organic. Focus on what I do. Stick there. Love it. How are you doing, Norma? And I died.
Oh, so there's probably a job.
I'm probably not quite that much.
Yeah, I can go about them. Especially as I get older.
I would say before you go I would say how much you go into measurable impact. It's going to be safe businesses that would enter far lower restaurants. We could have very middle class. And because for lease, I know it's more than just our increase of money. Some of the small businesses. Yeah. That's right, that's right. Yes, that's got to be the criteria.
I started in September of 19.
I started in March and April.
Yeah, so, yeah. In September it'll be.
We're moving up. We're moving up. Am I going to hide this one? I want to know who's best.
Been there since I've worked here.
That was a rough meeting, guys.
So that's you lost and found then?
Yeah, I guess so.
I think somebody lost a toy or something over
Out the car.
Just got some good insight. He just was very disrespectful. Basically saying, if you don't agree with me, that's a clash.
Well, I thought that was.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to reconvene, and I'm going to make a motion that before we start in the next topic, I'm going to make a motion to suspend Resolution 339, Series 1996, if we have a tie, for 90 days. Do you have a second? Suzanne. Does everybody understand what I...
Thank you, Mayor Carr. That's what I wanted, a little clarity.
Yeah, so if we have a tie in the next topic, then we're delaying 90 days. The comp plan contract. Do you want to discuss it first? If we have a tie, we have this resolution 339 for the public that says if we have to tie, we keep coming back week after week after week. Instead of doing that, we're going to delay it 90 days if we have a tie.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Suzanne. Suzanne.
I'm sorry. Case?
Yes.
Labar?
Yes.
Neal?
Yes.
Paff?
Yes.
Zulawaga?
Yes.
Carr?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
So 7B is to approve the Logan Simpson Professional Services contract to complete the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Update and Land Use Code Review. Presenter, Planning Director Sally Riley, please.
Thank you, Mayor Carr, council members. After meeting and discussing this topic with the mayor today, after speaking with the consultant Logan Simpson, also after touching base with a few of the community members who were involved in the 2010 comp plan, and after very careful consideration, I recommend that the City Council pause, move forward with the 2020 comp plan and code review, take a pause during these unprecedented times with COVID-19. My suggestion is that you place this contract on the November 19th or the December 3rd council agenda. That way, the balance of this year will give us time to heal and plan for the best way to proceed in 2021 with a robust community engagement plan that adjusts to a new normal. I was thinking back to the 2009 comprehensive plan when we were dealing with the Great Recession, and the town came together to work on our long-range plan. We have that opportunity to do that again at the start of 2021 and motivate our community to develop a vision and an aspirational plan for the next decade. But at this moment, we need to pause and deal with the COVID-19 issues, collect our strength to heal our community and our region. It will, however, be important to keep the funding alive with the DOLA grant, the $50,000 that we have from DOLA, and the 2021 budget. So let's pause, commit to fund the project, work to develop a community engagement plan that will be implemented in 2021. The comp plan has the potential to unite and motivate our community to plan our future growth, development, and financial sustainability. After 2020, we need to look to a positive future of Woodland Park, and I recommend that you table to November or December.
What were those two dates you mentioned, if you wouldn't mind?
November 19th or December 3rd.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions, comments? Yep, Mayor Pro Tem Labar.
This may be the one time that Sally Riley and I are going to fully agree on something.
Congratulations.
I support her idea 100%.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Neal.
Yeah, I guess Sally or Ms. Riley, number one, I'm impressed with your recommendation. I came here with Paul Saunier in my mind because I had to have an inspiration, and he was it. I have seen him individually vote different than the entire city council, but he stood his principles. And I was very uncomfortable with the contract language and the spending of the money. So I came here thinking, how am I going to make it through this, arguing with the planning director to get it structured so that it accomplishes what we want. To hear you make that recommendation, I'm going, whew, that debate doesn't have to take place. But I would ask, would you be willing to work with council members individually on the contract language? I have 26 years of contract language experience, and 8 military or government, writing it from the government side for award to commercial, and another 18 in the commercial, in the public sector, responding to and writing contracts both ways. I had a lot of discomfort with the language, the way it was written, that I would love to work with you to get it so that I can at least feel good about the construct of the contract. Then we can go into, rates and money and things like that separately, but it separates the two from just the raw contract language versus what we're trying to do. Because then what we're trying to do, when I read Larry Logan's comments and former Mayor Crane's comments, they resonate in that we want to take care of the citizens. And I responded back to former Mayor Crane, and I let him know, because of the language in his letter, it sounded like the city council didn't care about the citizens, and I wanted to assure him nothing could be further from the truth. We really are looking at the citizens, but we want to do the right things for him, and I think we need to get some sequences, maybe look at some of the strategic vision, get some consensus with the city council in that 3-month period of time. Do we still agree with the priorities? Because that kind of sets the tone from the city council governing body perspective, setting the stage up front, which we've all talked about, getting ahead of something, and then let the bottom up kind of come mesh with the guidance and vision that the city council has gleaned from the citizens that elected us. It's not our individual personal priorities, it's what we've heard the citizens tell us, those priorities. So getting that meshed with the bottom-up new citizen approach, I'm just impressed with you doing that. It allows us to do that work, in my opinion. So I thank you for that offering, and I yield the floor back to the mayor.
And I would thoroughly enjoy sitting down with you to look at the contract and learn from your experience.
Yeah, I've done thousands of contracts with the feds myself, but I'm glad there's other people who can pitch in, because I don't want to do it anymore. Any other comments from council?
Well, thank you, Sally.
Mr. Zuluaga.
I have a totally different perspective on this entire process. I'm glad you want to put it on pause. I didn't support it to start with, and I won't support it 3 months from now. But let me give you context of why that is.
Please.
We have been a republic for 244 years, and not until 1917 did we think that there was some value to what is called a comprehensive plan. And the Supreme Court ruled, in actual fact, that comprehensive plans were infringing on private property rights. So it has become a political football, which in about 1974, the United Nations took up. Well, the United Nations doesn't reflect the United States. So this whole process of thinking that we're going to use a comprehensive plan to plan our citizens' future is a misnomer, period. it gives authority to government employees to set the future for the citizens, and I just don't support it. Congress hasn't supported it. It's a voluntary thing. It has no legal basis, period. And it's a good, you know what the former mayor said? That's very good, to get the citizens together to say, what do we want to do when we grow up? I get it, but we've grown up. And 10 years ago, over 100 citizens got together to determine what is good for Woodland Park. Suddenly, 10 years later, we have to spend $100,000 to determine what we want to do when we grow up for the next 10 years. I don't support that. So I think that it's good for us to take what we did 10 years ago and look at what of that still resonates with the people of Woodland Park. I don't think we need an expert from outside of 25 miles out of town to tell us what our new strategy is. I think it's a total waste of money. I'd much prefer to put that $50,000 to pay down the debt. And then I would like to put that money into what do we need to do to plan for the community for bypass solutions, things that matter to the community down the road. I don't think we have to be spending a bunch of money to rewrite paperwork. I think it's a waste. So consider that over the next 3 months, because you'll face the same thing with me 3 months from now.
I would appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and let you know about the benefits, and that this is not a regulatory document. You're right. It is an aspirational document that provides a road network, a path, a roadmap to the future. And without a plan, communities flounder. So let's plan on getting together and we can discuss the value that we gained from the community engagement and setting goals, objectives, and actions for this community, because we are 2/3 built out. We have 1/3 left for growth to do it right. So if we don't have consensus on how we approach that future growth and development, then we're going to flounder.
Well, I think we could handle some of these things very clearly in-house. When you look at the prior mayor here, he said many volunteer hours. They didn't get paid to put their input into it. So for us to spend $100,000 with some outsourced company to tell us what we think within ourselves, I think that we could better develop what you're talking about, the healing in the community and the growth together as a body amongst ourselves. So I would invite you to explore that and not think that we have to have DOLA money to add to a pool of money that we're going to spend when we can really get our heads together, assess what we have here. And this is a fine document. Yes, some of it's old, the stats are old. It doesn't take that much to get that corrected, and I don't think it takes $100,000. So I don't want to debate you more.
Sure.
I just wanted to offer for you a perspective that you've got a headwind. And so I want the best for the community, but I think we can do that. And I don't think we have to be, soliciting all these. Because, look, I'll tell you, we've had feedback from Green Mountain Falls, the same company you want to use. They said, so I said to my friends, and they're deeply engaged in Green Mountain Falls, they said, what an absolute waste of $100,000. The community felt it was a total waste. Now, DOLA gave them $50,000, and one benefactor in town gave the other $50,000. But the community said, what a waste of our time. And that's the same company who's done El Paso, Green Mountain Falls, and now proposes to do Woodland Park. I'd like to just save the waste of $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Paff.
As a general principle, since this process seeks community involvement, which it should, and community input. By far, the most effective means of community input in any endeavor in life is the sum total of individuals seeking their own best interests based upon the principles that they live by, based upon their conscience, based upon the circumstances that they find themselves at in any given time in their lives. So a very comprehensive review of the beginning of this approach and what was laid out is necessary, and it's very good to take a few months to do that. You are right that that this is an aspirational document, but it also has some very specific guidelines, the 2010 plan. You look at issues like wastewater, water and wastewater, transportation and drainings, public safety, city finances, economic development. I mean, yeah, it's aspirational, but it's also somewhat directional, and from a political perspective, requires following through because it's ostensibly a community process. The reality is these are not always community processes. When I looked at the scope of services, so I did a little highlighting on the scope of services. All the pink areas are city staff functions and activities. Yellow are city council activities, and green are public activities. And actually this should be yellow and green. First page is all city-based. Second page, we see a decent combination of council and community activity. Of course, the subcommittees have no more than one council member on them, but that's what most of this refers to, with some more city input. We get a little bit of community stuff, but we're talking about open houses and input, and that's fine. That's all good. More city stuff. Subcommittees, combination of public and council efforts. More staff, public and council efforts. More staff. One reference to the word city council. This is the first one on page 6. More staff. Now, most assuredly, the implementation of any such plan like this, when it comes to municipal code, must be undertaken by, or as is required in our municipal code, by the city manager and he directs staff, and that's certainly appropriate. What I see in this document as it is nearly no council input, where the council directs that input. They might be mixed in, and no authority of council over any of this except to vote for the final plan. So the process is essentially run by the city staff with a few efforts of community engagement along the way, where we allow the community to come in and say something, which may or may not be adopted by the plan, maybe through the subcommittees, but all that may not be adopted by the plan because the final plan is going to be written by the company with input from the city staff. So that's all fine and good. There are things to be learned through a process like this. And I've seen the list of subcommittees from the previous document, and there's most certainly people in the community that were involved in subcommittees. At the end of the day, this becomes a city document compiled by the contractor with the input of the city in its final presentation, and then voted on by the council. So I go back to my original principle. The most effective and efficient means of community input is the sum total of individuals and families making decisions based upon their needs at any given time. It's a basic economics principle. This is how economics works. Government involvement in the process is necessary in terms of sustaining and holding up the rights of individuals in a community, but is meddled with far too often by government input. So whatever process we decide to undertake, I only have one vote in this, but whatever process we undertake at the end of the day needs to leave the power in the citizens' hands, needs to help the citizens direct the character and the nature and the future development of this city. This does not get there as written. What does get there is something that may not even be written down at all. It would be a rewrite in some ways of a municipal code that is not always equally applied to the citizens, that sometimes meddles into that decision-making process that individuals need to make. And without what happens in this town being directed by the people who live here, with the least amount of input by what we do through our municipal code, we cannot build and expand the character of the city. It's a fundamental principle, and I hope that whatever we decide to do will involve that. It won't be this, in my mind, but hopefully whatever we decide to put together will do that, will get us out of the way, and let the people go run and build the engine, because that's the only hope for this city in the future.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go last. Councilmember Case.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify some things for the public. I was a participant in the last comprehensive plan, and although as a staff member, and as what was described this evening is not what took place. There was a lot of engagement by the City Council. There was a lot of engagement by the staff, and there was a great deal of engagement by the community. And it was not a product of the consultant, although they did produce the document. It was not written by the consultant, and what was described is grossly erroneous. So I just had to clear that up. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinion. Councilmember Neal.
Yeah, I'm sorry to prolong this, but I think it's important. I do want to add a little comment to what Councilmember Zuluaga said, a little bit of what Councilmember Pfaff and what Kelly said. I briefly said, after the contract, that I kept my comments to, working with you on the contract, and then I kind of glossed over the rate. I want to talk about that because I think Mr. Zuluaga is spot on. The pricing in here, to me, is I'm having a hard time understanding how we could come up with $100,000 when I think it probably closer to a $10,000, $20,000 at most contractor-supported effort with the city staff and the city council. So $100,000. And let me give you an example that just when I started really looking at this, so you know what I'll be coming to talk to you about. I see a project manager hourly rate of $102.52 per hour. I come from Washington, D.C., where I hired dozens of project managers. They don't command a $102 salary. They're in the $45 to $54 an hour range. So if you add benefits on top, I can go $60 an hour, yet we're stating that we're paying $102.52 per hour for a PM. Then I go to the lowest rate per hour. The lowest It's $86.72. I don't think there's more than 10 people in Woodland Park that make that salary, $86 an hour. And the way it's worded, it's not even by individual, it's by task. And it doesn't break down, well, how do you accumulate that $86 rate per task? So we need to work hard to get a contract down to a $10,000 to $20,000 at most, because this comp plan is actually, if you read it, it's not far off base from what I've heard from the citizens. We haven't accomplished all the goals in here. We deviated from it. I mean, I can't find an aquatic center in here yet. We built one.
It's in there.
Is it? Okay. I didn't have the electronic version to do a word search. I kept looking for it manually, but there's all kinds of tasks in there that we still should be aspiring to accomplish. So starting over and spending $100,000, I think is not appropriate. To Robert's comments, I'm sorry, Mr. Zuluaga's, to Mr. Paff's, the process, the city council. Now, individually, each one of us, we could engage at task number 2 in the defined process. Task number 2 as an individual. But we're up here as a council. The council doesn't come into play in this contract as written until task 13 out of 14 tasks. So that is way too late in the process as a council to be engaging. I think we should, as a council, be a part up front with the citizenry and the city staff much earlier on as a recognized city council. So I agree exactly with what you're saying. The process and the official capacity that we're participating needs to change a little bit. And then, Kelly, to your point, I think the document, the effort that you went through before is good, because I still think the product is pretty daggone good. It just needs tweaking. And I'm hoping that with the citizens' interaction, you got to have the citizens' interaction, but we have to also have city council a participant, because we got to get 4 votes, and we've had a hard time getting 4 votes on anything. We got to get 4 votes to approve the comprehensive plan. So I would like to see us as an official council early on going through that with the citizens.
If I could share with you, it was quite a long process over a period of time in meetings and community events and engagement. And through that process, similar to how we are liaisons to different committees, then we report back to ourselves and we have a conversation. So it's an iterative process, if you will, where we share with each other what we did in our particular committees as a council. And so we deliberate through that process, just like we do when we engage with our committee or our citizens and staff in our particular groups. And this is how we did it then. Just, I don't know how we're going to do it forward, but just to share with you how that happened. It wasn't that we all stayed in our isolated corners. We came together at meetings as a council and through the process had discussions as a council. So it wasn't that we weren't involved, and maybe it's not delineated on that task list, but know that it was an engaged process, if that helps you.
So I'm going to jump in. Councilmember Paff is up next. I'm going to make one little comment, and then I'm going to finalize after him. I was a citizen on that committee, and I had very bad taste in my mouth at the end of it because of the way that it was, certain committees were conducted, and the citizens really weren't listened to always. But it's all diluted when you have 100 people. You know, one vote. You know, each of us here has 1/6 of a say in things. when you have 1/100th of a vote, everybody's got different ideas. And so if you get 1/100th, I guess the logic would say if you got 1/100th of the things you were looking for, you were successful. But it's hard to really convince yourself of that. I will welcome Councilmember Paff, and then I'm going to do some final comments.
Okay. Just to correct the erroneous statement of Councilmember Case, I did not represent what happened beforehand. I suspect it's a lot more of what Mayor Carr just described than what Councilmember Case described. But what I was describing was this, which is not what you just described. So let's be very clear. This is the moving forward document. And as Councilmember Neal rightly stated, it's not till task 13 that you see city council. You saw how many pages I went through before I got to the word city council. So the people elect us to help direct these things, while at the same time, as the political process weaves and moves around, as Councilmember Neal is good at doing, giving us their input to see what they think as well along the way. Always confiding our thoughts to them and receiving their input, but they elect us to help drive this process. And there's no doubt that there's expertise on the city staff and with the city manager to be able to provide the type of input that can be extremely useful in this process. But they look to us at the end of the day to direct it. I want to also agree with Councilmember Neal very much related to the money. Having also been in D.C. and worked in that area, I have to 100% rubber stamp exactly what you said, because that's the way it is. I mean, I had staffers in my congressional office who are making $30,000 a year. I mean, it's just so, and there are people who command much more, but they're usually lawyers who are messing things up anyway. So this document that exists right now, to the extent that it needs to be followed, is not entirely a bad one in terms of giving some direction or thought. But then ultimately we've got to direct that. So I just want to thank Councilmember Neal for his comments. I think they're wise and right on target.
I'm going to take the last bit, so if anybody else has anything to say.
I just have a quick thing to
Councilmember Lamar.
To Councilmember Zuluaga's point of, the planning being in conflict of private property rights and so on and so forth, I really encourage every council member up here to be aware of how hypocritical you are when you are making these private property comments. You are supporting a zoning change that is violating and taking private property rights away from owners when you're restricting size and their ability to contract. So I don't think it's fair to turn to Sally then and say, but I'm not going to support this plan because this is in conflict with property rights. You don't get to pick and choose what's in conflict with the Constitution. So you either are against the zoning changes because it violates property rights, or you are for them and cannot come back now and say, oh, but this is against property rights, so I'm not going to vote for it. And then say you're going to support a bypass, which would require a significant amount of government taking of private land in violation of private property rights, although yes, they would be compensated at possible market value by the government. They don't necessarily want to give up their land so that a highway can run through it. So I just get frustrated with comments that say, well, I the Constitution and I support, and this thing doesn't. Well, a lot of it doesn't. And that's why Sally and I know each other, and we know where we both stand on those issues, and why I can say, I support moving this 100%. And it's a rare support of Sally's perspective, albeit right. And oftentimes she's right, and she does a wonderful job, and absolutely nothing I say up here about private property rights is ever meant personally towards you. Ever. You're very professional, you know what you're doing, and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
But it's really frustrating to hear council members want to vote on incredibly stringent zoning laws that remove private property rights but then turn around and say they don't support another thing because it doesn't align with property rights. And that's just an observation I had to make. I'm sorry. So, please.
So I heard the city manager. We welcome answering questions from staff at this point. I guess he has a question he'd like to answer for us.
To be honest with you, it sounds like there's a lot of work to do between council and staff to get a better understanding of what staff is capable of. I think there's, and also the comp planning process. I think this discussion started with the understanding that staff concurred with council that this needed to be a council-driven process, that you needed to provide the guidance up front. I thought that's what was going to happen this evening, but that's not apparently what the direction this is going. So I just want to make sure that you understand that staff, this kind of project is monumental. It's a very large project. I think the expectation that the planning department will be able to manage this type of engagement themselves while also maintaining their other responsibilities with the Board of Review, Board of Adjustment, the Planning Commission, all the other activities that go on is not a realistic expectation. And so I just want council to realize that you're not going to find a project manager for $20K to manage with planning and code review experience to be able to manage a project of this size. But I concur 100% with council that this needs to be a council-driven process. Staff wants to see council get the best feedback from the community as possible, and it needs to be satisfying to your expectations. So that's all I'll throw out there for right now. I mean, I think we're all in agreement to suspend this for 90 days and give us some time to probably discuss it more in detail. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I'm going to have my final comments if everybody's okay with that. Yeah. No, I'm going to get to that. So one of the concerns I had was the public engagement during COVID problem. 4 of us ran, well, maybe 5 of us ran here on the public engagement portion, and certainly we're elected to do that portion and are very sensitive to that with our constituencies, as all 6 of us are, frankly, whether we ran or not. But that's a high priority for some of us, all of us maybe. I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I'm just going to speak for myself. And so I'm very concerned that during this COVID situation that we have a real problem with public engagement. And a week ago I put out a little test case out there, and I asked for feedback on the code comp plan, and I got pretty much what I expected. It's a very limited kind of process. Unless you go and knock on every door, which I did in 2018, well, not every door, but pretty much, it's really hard to get full engagement. You get the usual suspects, is what my label is for the 100 to 200 people that are engaged in this town. And you have to give away steak and lobster to get more than that, or something. I don't know, gold bars. I don't know. It's frustrating for all of us who want more community engagement, but certainly during COVID, it's a problem, and it's very. I don't have any confidence. There's no magic formula to it, and of course, I only tried the free types of methods to do those things. There's mailers. There's all kinds of other things. Frankly, I know about mailers. I did 2 of them during my election campaign, and do they produce anything? Who knows? But there's a lot of engagement that's not going to happen. Like Councilmember Case said, I was one of the people in the citizenry. I was on kind of a committee that had much significance, but I was involved with the whole thing. And we did it over at the Cultural Center. We did subcommittee meetings. We had all kinds of meetings. I don't remember the council being anything but a single person in those subcommittees, frankly. They were just another citizen talking, which is fine. But the problem I have is the same problem with this with this draft, I don't have it in front of me, what's this thing called?
The scope of services.
The scope of services. It isn't front-loaded with council, so I think we've got some work to do. I think at this point, my biggest problem is reflective of everybody who said everything before me, and unfortunately I don't get credit for it because you guys all said wonderfully well in front of me, and that's fine. I didn't sign up for this to get accolades. So I think there's tremendous input that's happened tonight. I would like to see contract issues resolved. I'd like the scope resolved. But right now on the table, and I want council to talk about this, we have a motion to. We don't have a motion, but we have on the table as our comment is to approve this contract. The planning director has given us an alternate, which is to November 19th or December 3rd. I would opt for December 3rd just to get us more possibly past this coronavirus situation. I don't even know if we're going to be past it at that point, but we have an opportunity. We're going to find out with schools opening, maybe our blessed governor has thrown down the gauntlet with mask wearing. You know, we've got a dynamic here, and so I would recommend we can either do one of two things. We can either approve this contract right now, or we can go to, I would suggest, December 3rd, and that's where I'd like to put it in front of the council. I'm going to go in order here on what your preferences would be.
I agree.
Which one?
December 3rd.
Okay.
May I make a motion?
Well, I kind of want to get a
December 3rd is great. I think that gives us more time for the COVID situation to maybe get towards some resolution. I think the more time, the better with regards to being able to come together and commune and do the work. So I think that's great.
So my proposal is, do we either okay the contract tonight and vote on it, or do we delay? And it sounds like we've got two so far for delaying.
Yeah, I think the wise point is to delay, because if a vote is taken, I think you're going to get 4 votes right now to say no, which would terminate the effort of trying to modify it by December.
So we've got Councilmember Paff. What's your thought here?
I might entertain voting for it now on the basis of what Councilmember Neal said, but December 3rd is fine.
Councilmember Zuluaga.
Well, city manager asked for direction, and it's pretty clear to me that this contract is been shown to be flawed as it is, so why would we defer till December 3rd on a flawed contract? And the second thing, I think it's pretty clear that, speaking for myself for sure, I don't think that this council has the stomach for a $100,000 expenditure into this either. So I think that I'd be up for a vote to 86 this contract now, and if the city planner wants to come back with something that is more realistic after talking with Council Member Neal, that would be real. But for us to pretend that this contract's still going to be fine in 3 months is, I mean, I'd make a motion to vote for this contract right now.
So we've got a split consensus here, but not really. It's kind of 3 for sure, and 4 maybe. I would say that if somebody wants to make a motion one way or another, please feel free.
Mr. Mayor, just clarification. The expense would be a net of $50,000 because of the funding from DOLA, but I would make a motion to delay this contract to the December 3rd agenda, understanding that Councilmember Neal will, and maybe others, will work diligently with Sally to work on the contract language, and that the other council members may work with the staff in resolving some of the other scope of services issues and things like that maybe folks have heartburn with, and see what we can arrive at for December 3rd.
Yes, I think there's, I know we're not really discussion mode here, but I think there's.
That was a really long motion, but.
I think there is a lot of work that can be done, and I know it's painful for staff, but we really need to do that work. And I think with the input of several people who are smart about this, I don't include myself in that, but I would like to take a pass at some of the scope of services too. If that's the motion.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. LeBar?
Yes.
Neal?
Trying to make sure I understand what the vote is.
We're going to delay till
Delay
December 3rd agenda.
And rework the language. We're not just delaying to vote on the same contract.
Correct.
Yes.
Your name is in the motion. That you're going to be working with
I
Sally.
understand.
You are memorialized in this
Offering
motion for all
Sally, I
time.
would gladly sit with you. I think you're very professional. I don't mind working with you.
I guess that was his second, so.
I said yes.
No, that was a yes.
That was a
that's
yes
a yes.
vote.
Okay.
Yes vote to the
Pat?
motion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Zulawaga?
Yes.
Carr?
Yes.
Case?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Excellent.
Would you mind reading
Thank you.
approximately what we think that?
Approximately. I'm going to have to listen to the tape, but most of what I have is a motion to delay to the 12-3 agenda, and that Councilmember Neal will work on contract language with Director Riley, and other council members will give input on scope of service.
Perfect.
And I think we'll all jump in and have individual conversations, and I don't think we're going to be locked out of the planning director's office.
Absolutely not. I would welcome sitting down with all of you to make sure that it meets your expectations.
Thank you. Well, that was easy.
Okay.
Thank you. Ordinances on initial posting. Remember, it's initial posting. We're considering ordinance 1381, adjusting expenditure appropriations to the general fund in the amount of thanks for fixing that, $674,515.14 for the CVRF fund, and amending ordinance 1360, series 2019 on initial posting, set the public hearing for August 6, 2020. Finance Director, oh, she is. You were hiding behind there. I didn't see you.
I just came back in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this ordinance is simply for the CVRF Coronavirus Relief Fund, and will give the city permission to spend the funds for the grants and programs so that we can subsequently get reimbursement from the state. So the $674,515.14 will increase the general fund expenditures from $11,806,653 to $12,481,168.14.
And we're going to do our best to get all these reimbursed, which is one of the reasons I brought up some of those disqualifiers. But we will be commonsensical about it and work through those issues.
Just to note that there are revenues that provide the source of funding for these additional expenditures.
Yeah, we're in good shape. Yeah.
Thank you.
Comments? Motion. I'll make the motion to consider ordinance 1381, adjusting expenditure appropriations to the general fund in the amount of $674,515.14 for the CVRF fund, and amending ordinance 1360, series 2019 on initial posting, set the public hearing for August 6, 2020.
I'll second.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Neal?
Yes.
Pat?
No.
Zulawaga?
Yes.
Carr?
Yes.
Case?
Yes.
LeBar?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you. Our next item is public hearing to approve ordinance number 1380, amending the Woodland Park Municipal Code by adding section 1.05.030, appearance of names on the ballot. I don't see Jason. Oh, he is. He's here. I didn't see him up there.
Yes, Mayor, I am available. I've been on mute, so I don't annoy everybody with my coughing. There's not anything that's changed with this ordinance since the last reading. As you recall, this goes to help strengthen our code to make it clarifying what nicknames are allowed on our ballots and which nicknames are not allowed on our ballots. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, sir. I want to absolutely clarify that the election director,
Designated election official.
is good with this and in working with the city attorney. We're trying to make her life easier, and do you feel confident that you've done that, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, Suzanne and I, City Clerk, spent time going through this and how it's different from current code or the state statutes that we defer to, rather, in Title 31, and how this will help strengthen our position moving forward if these types of issues ever arise.
Thank you. Council, any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Councilmember Paff.
I'd like to move that we approve ordinance number 1380, amending the Woodland Park Municipal Code by adding section 1.05.030, appearance of names on the ballot.
I would love to second that one for personal reasons.
Thank you.
But please use your formal name.
Your Honor, if I could interject, we haven't had the public comment portion, so I would hate to have the vote go through without allowing the public an opportunity if there is anyone.
Yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, we are in public hearing. We have at least one person I would recognize. The planning director would like.
No, I'm sorry. I was just
reminding you. Oh, yes. Okay. Do we? I don't see the chat thing up there, so I don't know that we have anybody on Zoom.
Shall I make the motion again now, since there's no?
Rob, is there anybody on chat?
There's no hearing that anybody in the audience. Norma,
No.
Don, Myra, Tanner. Nope. All right.
You didn't ask Don.
I did. I said Don.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I don't know. Where are we?
Should I make the motion again, or is it?
I think the motion still stands. May I call the vote?
Please.
Thank you. Path?
Yes.
Zulawaga?
Yes.
Carr?
Yes.
Case?
Yes.
Labar?
Yes.
Neal?
I'm putting the final nail in the coffin on this very important one to me. Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0 unanimously.
Thank you. We have no new business.
Come on.
We're on to reports. I have a short list of events because, of course, we're under restrictions. On July 21st, the Business After Hours, sponsored by Anderson Enterprises at 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m., is maximum attendees 175 people, so get there early. Food, beer, wine, bring a camp chair. I'm assuming that means it's outside, but I don't know. It doesn't say that.
That's correct.
Thank you. And location?
Anderson Enterprises.
Oh, at Anderson Enterprises.
Yes, sir.
We know where that is.
And be sure and bring your umbrella, because invariably it rains at every one of his business after hours. Bless his heart.
Or a rain
it's like
suit.
the symphony.
Yeah, or wear your swimming suit.
Yeah.
July 22nd, the PPP program, Loan Forgiveness Lunch and Learn, put on by the Chamber, is from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And once again, it's on July 22nd. You can join by Zoom or attend in person. You can register at www.woodlandparkchamber.com. And we have Farmers Market tomorrow, even though I'll be in Denver, and every Friday. And that's all I have. Councilmember LeVar.
Yeah, I just wanted to address something really. I could take a whole evening to address this, but I'm going to just do it briefly. I was made aware of a letter to the editor in the newspaper in the Courier by Bob Carlson recently, where he had stated that Kelly and I had been privy to executive session information on behalf of Main Street, and that is how we were able to address the removal of a member. It is entirely inaccurate and frankly an outright lie. We knew that the member had been removed the next day, as did the rest of council. I wrote out an entire outline of time and a sequence to be sure of it. I'm sure of it. If anyone has questions about it or would like to discuss it with me, they are welcome to. But Kelly and I were not privy to any executive session information, and I'm also frustrated because it's a tad chauvinist to address it to only Kelly and I, as there was another council member who didn't vote for that person for the very same reason, but every council member was aware of the members of Main Street who were unanimously removed from the board the following evening when we had appointments to make. We were not privy to any executive session information, and I don't appreciate that type of blatant lie published in a newspaper. And if Bob Carlson has an issue with his removal or an issue with any one of us as council members, he can come into the podium and address us face to face, and we can have a conversation about it. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. I would caution all the council that we're trying to stay positive and not do any character assassination. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem LaBarre executed that perfectly without any problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember LaBarre. I appreciate that statement on my behalf as well. And I agree with what you said completely. And then I'd just like to say that from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, we have scheduled since we have a full board now, we have scheduled for our next meeting next month for a tour of all the parks with the board. So we're looking forward to that. We're executing safety in doing that by using more than one vehicle. So looking forward to that, and so are the new members of the board. Dawn is on that board as well, and so I think everybody has replied that they're going to be attending, so that we're looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
I want to go too.
And then we'll have our meeting after the tour. If you'd like to join us, Mayor, I'm sure you'd be more than welcome.
I've done it before, but it's a wonderful tour.
It is, yeah. Oh, yes, thank you, Hillary, for reminding me. The city has received a grant, and it funds small or businesses to attend the leading edge classes that are started Tuesday evening this week. It goes from 6 to 8:30 for each Tuesday till Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Thank you, Dawn. Let me start over. In Wednesday evenings, it started last night from 6 to 8:30, and it goes till September 6th, I believe is the date. Lord knows I may get that wrong. But we still have lots of room left and plenty of scholarships. The last night's kickoff was exceptional, and I would encourage businesses in our community and in Teller County, as a matter of fact, but we have scholarships left over. It's a $495 tuition to attend, and you get to also, as a bonus of signing up for this, you can take part in any of the workshops or things and trainings that SBDC has available. So I would encourage you, and if anyone here could share that with the businesses in town, you'll end up with a very good and concise business plan at the end of the course. And it will walk you through that, and I'm thrilled to do it. I did a business plan when I did my master's program. Much more difficult than this looks, but it really is effective, and I found it to be quite interesting. And I would ask you all to encourage businesses to sign up and take that, because they can still enroll and start on next Tuesday. They recorded the session last night, so you can catch up. So they did.
Okay.
And I think he's going to record all the sessions. So if you can't necessarily attend the class itself, which is Zoom. It's on GoToMeeting, but it's a similar environment. You could maybe do that way, but just check into that. Rob Feltz can answer those questions and get you hooked up. So I would encourage folks to take advantage of this because it's free.
I think there's flyers in the back, too. There was yesterday.
So it's an opportunity to really help. We were talking about helping small businesses earlier. And I think this is another opportunity to take advantage of to really try and help get your business rolling and take it to the next level. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Neal.
Yeah, Sally, I'm going to ask for help for one thing. Sarah Harwood. Yeah, okay. I do have a council liaison report for the Keep Woodland Park Beautiful. 3 things I want to point out. The directory draft, and the name directory is really a very informational guide that Sarah Harwood has put an enormous amount of effort into. 20 pages. Very appropriate information for anybody to see. You're going to be placing on the website, hopefully, and have a couple of documents in final review. Just for outstanding documents, I'm going to give those to Sarah. Sadly, I have one member of the council that resigned. Susie Graham did resign, so we can last thing that I need to report is the citywide cleanup. We do have dates established now. We have the primary targeted date of September 26th with an alternate date of October.
Bring snow shovels. Yep. Councilmember Pat.
Can I just add one more thing to that class?
Oh, all right.
It also gives you either 3 or 4 free consulting sessions with some of their specialist consultants, and they have a lengthy list of different areas that you can have complimentary consultations with. And they'll even recommend during the process of the course what might be a good place for you to go and who you should talk to that might help you with something you're struggling with in your business. So there's a lot of benefit that comes with it. Thank you for looking at that.
Yes, I wanted to refer to something that was discussed earlier in council related to consistent application of the zoning code by members of council. As Pro Tem LeVar, Mayor Pro Tem LeVar made the statement, I would absolutely with her entertain some future motion where we can eliminate the zoning code to provide for free use of property. I do believe in those property rights, but I need to correct one thing. There is a takings clause in the U.S. Constitution, and it requires just compensation. In fact, the specific statement is any criminal case to be witness against himself or to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So if we were to pursue some bypass in the future, then as long as just compensation is granted, then that is something that can be done. The experience of RTD in Denver many years ago was a horrible one because just compensation was not given and permission was not obtained. So if we were able to do that in some future thing, it is not an unjust use of that. But if we have problems with the zoning laws and how we're going to approach that, then I think we need to work within the system that exists or eliminate it entirely. And I would entirely entertain some future motion to do that because I am against zoning laws in a general sense. I had a great time at Shining Mountain Golf Course on July 4th. We had some council members show up. Others were unable to. Obviously, people have various things that they're doing, but it was a good time well into the evening. I want to, at that, in reference to that, In our recent discussion tonight related to the presentation that Barb Roy gave related to warnings that were issued there, I want to repeat my desire to find out if there's any business in this community that approaches, even mildly approaches, the same number of warnings and visits by either, what was it? It's Officer Wardham, what's her name? Wadham. So either Officer Wadham, is there any business that she, on a similar basis, went to that business anywhere near the number of times that Shining Mountain was visited by her, firstly. Secondly, apparently there were some complaints. I'm not certain if it's possible, but I'd love to see the names and substance of those complaints to verify that they happened. And I'd also like to see if there's any similar amount of complaints with any other business in this community. Because my concern is, having been presented with that information before it was presented tonight, and I did not know it was going to be presented, I was very alarmed at the number of warnings issued, the number of visits, which has now been well documented by what was handed out tonight at council. And my personal but not conclusive belief is that expresses a degree of targeting on a business for some reason I'm uncertain of. Sally Riley says that that's not the case, and so I'd like to see the evidence of that. And I'd like us to get to a place in this community where, because I saw some of the comments related to the planning documents and the questionnaire was put out, rightly, there are many people that are quite frustrated with some of the sniping that takes place in this community. I think the only way we can get away from that, ultimately, is for people to be able to live their lives, to pursue their own interests, to make the best of what they have. I think the most productive and best society is one in which everyone gets to reap all the rewards of the good decisions they make, and they reap the substance of the bad decisions that they make in a negative way. It causes society to be most profitable, effective, and useful. And I think this is my concern with us ever on any level of government, having an expansive government that's meddling constantly what people are doing. Because ultimately, you're not protecting anything, or not much of anything, unless you are protecting people from being the subject of a crime or some other actual abuse. But nannying people to do certain things that meet the goals and needs of any government structure is usually a wasteful effort, both on the end of the government and on the end of the person receiving such requests. So I think we need to take a look at that in this community, because I have to agree, I see a decent amount of sniping, and it's disappointing, frustrating, and it's not sniping to call it out, because I know people think that I snipe. The reality is I'm calling out some things that I think are a grave concern, and I'll oppose anyone telling me that's mere sniping. We have a great community. We've got great people. We've got great potential. We live in a beautiful part of the state with a beautiful view of the premier mountain that most people think of when you come to this state. We will make this community attractive, again, to people when we just allow the people in the community to do what they want to do, and anyone else that wants to come in and join us, allow them to do it too. That's what I hope that we'll be doing now and in the future. Any comprehensive plan that anyone might envision would go to that end, and I look forward to hearing more information about the Shining Mountain Golf Course situation.
Thank you. Councilmember Zuluaga.
Thank you. So, a I'll start with my liaison reports. So the DDA is moving forward with negotiations with some development group. And if I'm not speaking out of turn, we're working on getting them actually coming out to visit before the final drawing. Is that correct? Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing happening there. Despite all of our voting or not voting, the DDA continues with the officials or the elected directors, board members who are on that board. I don't have anything to report on Main Street. The last thing that Main Street did was for the 4th of July, passing out water in town, and we're meeting a little later this month. So I'd also like to comment on Shining Mountain to this extent. I liked what Miss Bibbin, is that her name? Babin said. I think it's a great idea for us to look at finding creative and flexible ways to let our business communities prosper. So I know it's not the right time, but I would certainly entertain putting it on the agenda to discuss that and propose some temporary ordinances to allow the business to utilize their own private property in a way that would benefit the community short-term. What she talked about in terms of RVs, I think that's great. And at the same time, Sally, something that I would kind of like to see kind of mix in that is that whole application process, like for the use of the park or whatever, is like takes 45 days. Can we look at ways that are going to make that process simpler? Maybe now we have an online website. Can we look at streamlining ways so that, somebody has a creative idea to want to hold an event, really, 45 days later? I mean, why can't it be 7, Can we look at what the pieces would be to make that much more expedient and more dynamic for the community? That would be something I'd say we could take on at the same time. And the last thing is one of our citizens, his name is Mike Martinez. He sent me something for all of us to consider. He says, "It is rare that a small city becomes a gateway that a much, much larger population must pass through to get to the beautiful mountains and all the adventures and pleasures they present. Anyone wanting to get away to camp, hike, fish, hunt, use ATVs, go four-wheeling, or go sightseeing, or just to get into cooler, cleaner places must go through that city. Can you just imagine the possibilities that small city has to market itself and profit from such a strategic position? That is possible, if, and only if, it is forward-thinking and imaginative, creative enough to take strong advantage of that rare position."
I'm going to interrupt you. We have procedures that we're not supposed to read things into the record. If you'd like to pass that out via Suzanne to the council, I'd appreciate that.
So then I'll just cut to the chase. He's talking about what if we were to have an annual event called the Changing of the Aspen Festival. I think it's a great idea, creating an implant. I'll put this into the record if I can give it to you, and you can post it. But just really positive vision for what we can do with a little town, and just in the whole vision of what we are doing as a community and as a business community to really capture all these people who come through our community, and as you say, at America's most beautiful mountain. I think the citizens are speaking up. That's my point. The citizens are speaking up with some great ideas, and so if you can get this posted, that would be awesome.
I sure will. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. I would welcome you, and this goes for everybody on council, is this, when you have an idea and you'd like to put something on the agenda, please send it to me. Let's make them, it can be a one-line bullet, whatever, we'll talk about it. And I'm accumulating a list of those things, but I want to hear from all of you if you have ideas for whatever it is. And we'll see if we can get them into the agenda, if we get enough people who are interested in it, because it takes at least 2 people. That's all it takes. But some of them are great ideas, some of them are non-starters, But they're probably all great ideas. It's just that some of them are just non-starters. But anyway, I'd welcome all council to send me all their ideas on things they'd like to talk about in future agendas. Everybody, I'm compiling a list, like I say, and those items you mentioned, please put them in a small email to me. I appreciate it. Thank you. The city attorney's report. Jason.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have much to add other than thank you for letting me participate remotely so I can selfishly keep all of my germs to myself. I did also want to point out that the executive session this evening, since I won't be present, is probably not going to happen. I was going to bring that up earlier in the additions, deletions, or corrections, but I didn't have the chance to chime in. So that's all I have, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I failed to mention that we did an executive decision earlier in the day and removed it anyway. But thank you for pointing out my failure to mention that. City manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention that just caveat on the conversation about the Leading Edge program, we have 4 scholarships still available. If members of the business community or startups want to take part in that, please get a hold of Rob Feltz on that one. I also wanted to just thank Karen Casey for a second successful community or Citizens Academy this year. I put a lot of faith in her to get that accomplished, and with our staff as well. But Karen often leads that project, and she did a great job again this year. I want to congratulate Glenn Jordan on his retirement again. I didn't get a chance to say anything earlier, but a great officer and a great person, someone who's served our community for a long time, and I know we'll probably see him again at the PD in the future. He won't be able to stay away. And then lastly, I just want to say, Paul Saunier, our former council member, I want to thank him for his service to our community. He was always a very lighthearted and I would say had always had a kind of a comedic approach to his policy analysis and his comments in the council, and I think that was very well appreciated, and I think just want to thank him again for his service. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Without any further ado, we are adjourned.
10:23.